And thank you. It's so nice to be here. We've been really looking forward to this. And we're going to start out by, or continue, we've already begun. We've got the music, we've got David talking about professors at play. We'll continue with a movement activity, an introduction movement activity. And yeah, so if you can come on camera, even for this particular activity, and then if you want to go off, there's times when it's great to see each other, and you'll see why. Okay, so this is a name and gesture game. All right, and now I have to talk to my two partners. This will help us, I think. Shall we try to come on camera again? I think we're good.
Yep.
Okay. Now we're going to create our space, right? We're going to create our space, keep creating our space. And so this is called the name and gesture game. So what I was asking my co-hosts, June and Carrie, should we go around and do everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. So this is how it goes. Let's put everybody in the order that the host sees. So people hopefully see June in the top left, and then David, then me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's start with June. So
Good.
June is going to do a gesture. Say her name, the name you want us to call you, okay? For everybody, the name you want us to call you, and a gesture, and do a gesture of how you're feeling right now. Okay? So you'll do a gesture of how you're feeling right now. And then the rest of us will go around and we'll repeat. We'll say June's name and we'll do the gesture. All right? And we'll kind of like, so everybody should come off mute. And then we'll do it like right after she does it. Like, so we'll start to get a rhythm. Somebody gives it and then we respond. Okay? So, okay, June, why don't you start? And then we'll go David, Gwen, Carrie, and then Lisa, Christy, Susan, Jessica, right? We'll go like this, just this way, this way, this way. And if you're not sure, we'll just figure it out.
Sure.
Okay.
My name is June and I'm very excited.
Okay. My name is June.
June, and I'm very excited.
And you can just say your name, actually. David.
My name's David, and I'm flustered.
David.
David. Flustered.
Gwen.
Gwen.
Gwen. Carrie. Curious.
Harry.
Curious.
Now it's yeah, Lisa.
My name is Lisa, and I'm a little bit sleepy.
Lisa.
Lisa.
Sleepy.
Christy, woo woo.
Christy.
Christy. Woo! Susan, I think it's you.
Susan, groovy.
Susan.
Groovy.
Jessica.
Jessica, jovial.
Jessica.
Jessica, jovial. Now Joe.
Joe, mixed up.
Joe.
Oh, mixed up. Teresa, I think it's you. You have to unmute.
Teresa.
Teresa.
I'm Beth. I'm cold.
Ooh.
Beth is cold.
I'm Gurman and I'm a bit uncertain.
Certain. Adriana.
I'm Adriana, and I am feeling motivated.
Ooh,
Motivated.
Adriana, motivated.
I am Erin, and I'm also sleepy and I'm certain. So let's do this.
Erin.
I'm Grace, and I feel like I'm going in circles today.
Grace, you're going
Grace,
in
In
circles.
circles.
And John?
Nope. Well, I think Read AI should definitely have to do an emotion.
Okay, can somebody, maybe someone can interpret Read AI's emotion?
Thoughtful.
I'm
Oh,
Read AI and I'm
thoughtful.
very thoughtful and I know
Very thoughtful.
everything.
Thank you all. So nice. How was it to do that? What was your experience of that?
Great.
That was interesting.
I'm not seeing where people are. Who just said that?
Beth,
Okay,
I thought it was
okay.
interesting.
Yeah. Can you say what's interesting?
I've never done I've done a bunch of theater and I've never done that activity.
Ah.
That was interesting to see a new
Yeah.
thing.
Any other thoughts? Someone said great.
It's definitely connecting to mirror people's movements and behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can even do that game slower where everybody's making those movements and then you pick somebody to mirror on the screen, or we all mirror the same person. And it does create sort of this instant experience of, oh, we're doing this together. Oh, that's what
Yeah.
we're doing. Yeah.
And it was nice to see the variety of responses.
Yeah.
I feel like it would be more effective in person though, just to see that emotion and
Yeah.
that vibe. It's for me
Yeah.
hard to feel that on
Yeah.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Although
Yeah,
I felt yours, German.
Thank you.
Definitely. And it is great to do it in person too. Yeah. In classrooms. Okay. This is great. And it's one thing that's nice about it is I like hearing people say my name and send back to me what I did. Do you know, I enjoy that. Yeah. Okay, so Carrie.
Yes.
Why don't you-
All right. So let me tell you a little bit of what we're hoping to do today, what we're hoping to quote unquote accomplish.
I think that I can mute you, right? Yeah. Okay.
So June and Gwen and I are all members of the Yes and Higher Ed Network. Yes and, as we'll see as we go through the day, is kind of it's both a philosophy and activity and a way of seeing that is sort of built into improvisational theater. Improv as it's performed here in the United States in particular, but improv now as it's used all over the world. So yes, and is a conveying of how is it that a grouping of people can come together and create a performance without any pre-planning, any script, any, idea of where it's going to go. That's almost impossible unless you have a way of approaching it. And so yes, and is a key way that it's approached. It's not the only way. And if we had 5 workshops, we'd introduce all the other ways, but we're going to focus some on yes, and here, because I think for all of us, it's been a critical part of not necessarily, I think we all probably use the activity in our teaching, but more than that, I think having a yes and philosophy has changed what we see when we walk into the classroom and how we relate to people in the classroom. So before we do that, we thought it'd be helpful if people just quickly, if you know how to do this, to change your name with where you are and what field or area of study, or if you work at a university and you're not a teacher, what else you do at the university, just so we have a sense of the diversity of who's here.
Yeah,
So for
or put
example,
it in the
I'm going to
chat.
go to the 3 dots
Yeah.
in my box and I'm going to go to rename and I'm going to write.
I don't have the rename option.
Okay, then you could put it in the chat, Beth.
Just write it in the
I
chat.
just turned it back on. It should be working. Try it
Okay.
now.
Okay, so I'm gonna write Carrie, New York, and I'm in education. I'm a professor of education.
Where do you find that rename thing?
In the 3 dots in the top right-hand corner of your box, your personal box on the screen where your picture is. Your personal box.
And actually for me, I think I'm gonna write it in the chat because mine's a little too long to write there, so. You'll see my name here.
All right, so we're gonna, while you do that, the 3 of us are gonna take a minute, 2 minutes each to introduce ourselves to you. And, you know, there's so many ways to introduce yourself. So we're trying to use these introductions as a continued way of introducing you to what it is we're going to be doing today. So I'm Carrie Lobman. I'm a professor at the Graduate School of Education at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And I am the leader of education and research at the Eastside Institute. And why that's important to me is that having both a in the university location and an outside the university location has been integral in being able to be creative in my practice, because I've had a place to develop new ways of approaching learning and development that are not constrained by the set curriculums, the pressure from administration. I've had a place to create that and then bring that into my work and the university. The Eastside Institute is a hub for new approaches to human development and learning. We are completely independent. We're not part of a university and we don't get government funding. We're funded by the thousands of people who around the world who make use of what we do. And we have over the last, particularly 25 years, really been at the forefront is the wrong word, been at the center of a movement that we think professors of play are part of, which is why Gwen and I reached out to them originally, which is people around the world who are saying, you know, play and performance and creativity and the arts in particular, but play are integral to human beings being able to do new things. When we play, that's where we're willing to break out of what is already known or what is already seen. Little children do that all the time. I started my career as a preschool teacher. So we think that has not been made use of enough. And so we're at the center of a movement of people who are doing that in every field you can imagine: medicine, international relations, community organizing, mental health, education, obviously, things like
Outside of
agrarian
school
reform
education,
policy. Sorry, Gwen, say it again.
just outside of school education.
Yeah, youth development.
Development.
And Gwen and I in particular are the people at the Institute who are focused on organizing and finding out about people who are doing that kind of work in education and particularly in higher education. And that's how we connected with David and Lisa and Professors of Play. I'm going to turn it over to June.
Hi everyone, good to see everyone here. I'm from Singapore and I'm at the Singapore University of Social Sciences, where I teach leadership development to a bunch of undergraduates. On my class, where we kind of use improv activities in my class to bring collaboration and adaptability to life. And beyond the classroom, I actually do research in improv training to see how it can help people embrace the unknown a little bit more and to boost their flexibility when things don't go as planned. I'm also a member of the Applied Improv Network and have joined their conferences the past 2 years. The conferences are great. It's like a big family reunion of improvisers, educators, trainers, social workers, and everyone who is trying to tap into the magic of improv in their work. So I sense that applied improv is on the rise and it's expanding, and so it's great to see everyone here. Thanks.
Thank you, June. And thank you for doing this from Singapore in the middle of the night. So I'm Gwen Lowenheim. I'm the founder and coordinator of international conversation groups at Pace University, which is in Manhattan, right where the Manhattan Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge come together, and we can see that outside of our windows when we teach. So it's kind of cool. I don't know, it makes you think about the world more and how things are built. And I also run a facilitator training program for undergraduates and graduate students who want to learn to lead international conversation groups. And that's now a part of our department, and so it's like an established program there at Pace. And improv and performance is central to all of this work for building what you can call conversational ensembles, okay? That we're all actively building conversational ensembles all the time in our lives, but we're not usually related to as that we're creating the environment for a conversation to happen. So we work on that, and it's quite Vygotskian in a way. I don't remember if you mentioned Vygotsky, Carrie, but for those who have studied Vygotsky, it's just, yeah, that we're all both creators of the environments that we're in. And I love the kind of making the connections with the theory, practice, and improv being a big part of that. This is true also for my teaching. So I teach as a writing instructor, primarily for undergraduates, and also TESOL. I teach international students who are doing, you know, academic writing. I'm on the faculty of the Eastside Institute. I'm also a grassroots organizer there. As Carrie mentioned, we've been just trying to organize with people all over the world for many years, and in very ordinary ways. Now we have Zoom, and now we have email. That makes you can go a lot further, and we do stuff in person. And my particular bent for improv is improv and philosophical exploration. That's what I'm most interested in, and particularly in remix and group play in developing collaborative teams. So I work with teams, group leaders, classroom teachers to create conversations and community that build with difference. Okay, how do you create with differences, including viewpoint differences, which is not often worked on? And how do we do this in a way we can break out of scripts and make new discoveries together? It's very refreshing when you can make some new discoveries and versus just having viewpoints back forth. So we're working on that in different places around the world now. And I'm a big remix fan, which I mentioned. So as just remixing, I see if you look at everything as a remix, it changes how we study, it changes how we make use of materials. We become part of a historical adventure that came before us and have access to everything around us to create with. And I find that students get just very freed up once they have, oh, I can take this, I can remix, I can recreate. So it brings kind of a joy to the experience. So that's me. Okay,
right.
so now, yeah, June,
Yes.
right?
All right.
Yep.
Okay, so now we will do something experiential. So it's a kind of a taster of what applied improv can look like in different settings. So we're gonna break us out into 3 rooms. I think we will maybe have like about 5 to 6 people per room, and Carrie, Gwen, and I will each be in a room, and we will be planning a birthday party, but we have to say no but to every idea at the start of our statement. So let's try that in the room. Yeah.
Try that here first.
Oh yeah, let's try that here first. Yes, that's
And do
right.
you want me to show the slide, June?
Oh, yeah, sure, we can do that. Thank you, Carrie.
Okay.
So I will start. I will say, let's go to the beach for the birthday party.
No, but it might rain.
Yeah, but if it does rain, then I'm gonna melt because I'm really prone to melting. So I don't think we should be out in the rain.
Yeah, so then the next person can continue with a no but and a statement. So we'll do that in we can try it out in the rooms, and then we'll reconvene in a few minutes back in the main room for like a reflection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'm moving people to rooms.
And just-
And then I'll put us in those rooms as well. So does anybody have any questions? You're planning a party? The only rule is you have to start every sentence after the first one with no but.
And each person gets one sentence.
Yep.
Okay, here you go. All right, and Gwen, I'm putting you in room 1. June, I'm putting you in room 2. Won't let me do that. There we go. And I am joining room 3.
Well, I think we were the fastest group. Look at us.
We were the fastest. We were the fastest to have no party.
My prediction is that no one will have a party. There will be no party.
If they're staying longer, then they had a longer time to have a bad experience.
You guys came back so quick.
I know.
Shut that party down fast.
We were gonna force Teresa to eat cake, I think, even though she's allergic to it. That was our position.
You're gonna force her to eat cake?
Yeah. All right. Are you good, June?
Yes.
Do you want to find out
was-
how it went with each group? June, should we do that first?
Oh, sure. So, how did Lisa, would you like to share how our birthday party planning went?
We didn't come to very much consensus. So we just kept dragging ideas around all over the place. And so there was no sense of progress.
Yeah, because we have a vegan person.
Oh, well, that's,
And somebody who's inexplicably against sugar. Yeah. Doesn't compute for me, but okay.
Who else wants to share? Anybody else want to share what their experience was with that?
I always loved justifications for why we're not going to do something.
Yes.
Wait, who said that? I missed that.
It was
Jessica.
Jess.
Yeah. You had a great, Jessica had the last justification in our group, right?
Mhm.
We,
think I did.
going on a bus was suggested, right?
Yeah. And I made it a school bus and said I refuse to be on anything yellow.
What I like about the justifications, and you'll see in the next round, is that even though you're saying no, you have to have listened to what the person said to do a good justification, right? You can't just say no and move on to what you want.
No, I hate
You
turtles.
actually have to connect to what they said. Whereas when you say yes, often when people say yes, they then just move on to what they want to say anyway, right? Oh, yes, let's take a bus. And I'd like to bring my grandmother, like, which is not really building on the bus idea. So that's what I like about the justifications is they force people to actually admit they listened to what came before them and say something with it.
That's true.
June, should I put the second slide up?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, so for the next round, we will try planning a birthday party with the words yes and we see how it goes. Yeah. So it's the same concept, just that we just respond with yes and building on and the offers and the ideas.
Yes. So similar to what we were just saying, I really urge people to listen to what the person before you said and use that in what you add on to the party. And let's see how this one goes. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
going to put us back in the same rooms.
Mhm.
Uh, And end. David, did we not put you in a room either time? Oh no, I'm so sorry. I think you're muted. I think because you're the host. Oh, I made a mistake and I remuted
muted
you.
me.
There we go.
I figured you wanted me to stay in here just in case
No.
people had problems. No, I'm good. I'm tracking.
Okay, everybody should be back in.
Everybody.
I can just disappear.
I gave them 60 seconds to come back, which they didn't
Oh.
really need.
Yes.
Got one more room, still building their party. Here they come. All right, are we all back? Yeah.
Oh, back.
June.
How did the party planning go this time? Would anyone like to share what their party looks like?
Oh, it was so much more fun. We're going to have a Halloween party in which we dump cider on people upon arrival and then throw feathers at them and give them a beak and a copy of, oh, I'm the Raven, but I've bungled it a little bit. Something about the Raven.
Nevermore.
And they can get back in touch.
And don't forget the music.
Yeah.
And Halloween music. We did many rounds. And the
Birds can dance too.
Yes, it was a delight.
Right. That's great. Someone else?
Ours was on a boat with preparations for people who may be seasick. So we'd already made provision for them. And then we were having a rock and roll band, so they didn't feel the rocking and the rolling of the boat so much. And then we added clowns to it as well. And Carrie said that one of her favorite sights of all time was seeing a clown clowning and being sick on a boat at the same time.
I really like that when a clown is sick and throws up, it's confetti.
Ooh, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah, that's great. I like how the party also takes into consideration accommodations for people who might be seasick. So that's really great.
You
How
know, you
about
got to make sure you have accommodations and differentiate your party.
Yeah. How
And
about
was a third group?
Yes, there's a third group. So I think maybe Christy could share.
Sure. We were having a party at a park with a piñata that has props, but not frogs. But we do have frogs. That might be our theme. Our theme we might have decided was frogs. I'm uncertain where we decided that. We are also in San Diego, so that the weather is good. Something else. Anything else? I think there was a lot more than that. I'm kind of trying to come up with things now, but
I think we have chocolate cupcakes, vanilla cupcakes, and watermelon.
Watermelon cupcakes or watermelon?
No, just watermelon for people who are not trying to have too much processed sugar.
Yeah.
So we were trying to be inclusive.
Again. Yeah.
That group's very
It is
worried
very
about
inclusive
sugar.
and accommodating.
Yeah. That seems to be our theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just like a little taster about the yes and, like listening, building on offers and ideas. And maybe Carrie can bring us through the next part.
Sure.
About
Actually, let me start my part by asking, are there people here who use yes and in their classrooms at universities? I'd love to hear some of how people do. Adriana, do you want to share a little of, oh, you're at the Education School of Education as well.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so I teach a course that is in bilingual education, and part of their final advocacy project is to write a speech that is trying to convince school districts, inform and convince school districts of why they should keep bilingual education programs. And so the activity that I do before, or kind of like in preparation, is like a yes and. And so they start by saying like the reason, like, oh, like
Yep.
the research shows that bilingual education, blah, blah, blah. And then the next student goes, yes, and so we just do that,
Yep.
and it really gets them going into that final
That's great.
advocacy
That's
project,
great.
and they build up towards that.
Yeah, it probably takes some of the overwhelmingness away too of what it would mean to build something like that, right?
Yeah, and something that I find is that students really get into it and get very passionate and really get into
Yeah.
the role. And so sometimes what I do is I'll give them the scenario too. So I'll say, okay, you're a teacher and you're in like a teacher's lounge, and you hear the instructional specialist say this. And so
Yeah.
respond, and then we go, yes, and.
Yep. No, it's great. I mean, I think anybody who's learned yes and knows it creeps into your everyday life fairly easily. It's not, in my opinion, a panacea, because there are many people who end up saying yes and but, right? They throw the yes and in there, and then they find a way to say, but not really. I still don't want processed sugar. I do yes and in many forms every week in my, I teach at a graduate school of education, so the classes meet once a week, in some form for the first 4 or 5 weeks of the semester. Because what I'm trying to do, and I tell them this in the beginning, this is an incredible tool to help you transition from being somewhat passive in your learning to being more active. And it's also a great tool for breaking you out of what most of us learned in school, which is my job is to make me look good, right? My job is to make sure that I get the right answer. My job is to make sure that I'm either quiet and not seen, or that I do it right. And that yes and is a way to recognize that we're doing this together. And that we are creating something together, and that whether you agree or disagree does not preclude you taking responsibility for everybody being able to create a conversation together. So we do it like sort of ad nauseum, all different forms of it in the beginning of the semester. Beth, did you want to add something?
Oh, I just wanted to add, so I'm an instruction librarian, so every now and then I get to teach an entire course, but more often I'm a guest instructor's course. So I use yes and when I ask the students questions, because I really prefer not to be like, no, you're wrong.
Right.
Yes. Occasionally they are just wrong, but usually they're at least partially right. And so I try to like, yes, and the library catalog also has movies as well as books or whatever. So that's how I use yes.
Yeah. No, it's listening for offers, which is the other key tenet of improv, one of the other key tenets of improv. And I'll say one more thing about me, and then I want to share some of why we think yes and is so important in our world. But when I first learned to improvise, I was a kindergarten teacher, taught very young children. And what improv gave me was to see a way to see that we were creating this together. This was a play we were creating together. And that that didn't mean we all had the same role, didn't mean everybody was right all the time. It didn't mean there were not responsibilities I had as an adult, but it gave me a window into co-creation to look and see what were the offers that were being made in the classroom. It also, frankly, made me better at something they were already good at, which was playing, right? But it gave me a way to play with them that as an adult and as a teacher was a little foreign to me, because what I was mostly looking for as a teacher was the things I expected to hear, right? I was looking for the things that fit my model instead of the things that might surprise me, that I could use to build with. So for me, it was a pretty life-changing in both the classroom and out. It's really effective, it's very helpful at faculty meetings. Although that is the place where people are most tempted to say yes and but. So you have to really work on, no, we're not doing that game. All right, so I want to share a little bit. I'm going to do it fairly quickly because I think we would like to keep playing some more exercises. But I want to share, this is a slide that our director at the Eastside Institute, Lois Holtzman, who is a leading international Vygotskian scholar, a developmental psychologist, and one of my favorite books of hers is called The Overweight Brain, which really looks at how our need to know is keeping us from growing, and from growing as a species, and making a better world. But this
And
is a
it's now
slide.
translated into Spanish too, right?
Yes, as of a few weeks ago. So this is a slide that kind of talks about some of what I think play offers us, if you will, in changing how we see everything, and in particular, how we see who we are as human beings. So who and what are people? So on the one hand, we are not able to use our computer. There we go. On the one hand, we are shaped by our environments, right? And I know I'm talking to people with great deal of education in the room, but we all know what that means. We come out of particular environments. If we walk into a room, we suss it up and we know how to adapt to that environment. We are shaped by our families, by our cultures, by our time we were born in, but we are also shapers of our environments, right? And we actually call a lot upon Marx for this, that Marx said that that human beings both create the environments they're in, and then those environments constrain them, right? We're the makers of and being constrained by. We are tool users. We could all list 1,000 tools we're using right now, not the least of which is the language that we're using to speak to each other. We use tools every day, all the time. We now know we're not the only animals that do that, but we are certainly masters at it. But we are also tool makers. So when we were babies, we didn't use language. We made it. We felt it. We created it without, we didn't just use things, we played with them, right? If we rode on a train the next day, we made a train. So we are tool users and we are tool makers. We made the language that we're using as a species, the hundreds and hundreds of languages that exist. We adapt to culture, right? We're cultural creatures and we adapt to the cultures that we grow up in. We now know with great certainty that if you're born in the middle of Nigeria or you're born in the middle of San Diego, the culture of those two places will help determine some of who you are and who you become. But we create culture all the time. We created those cultures in those two places. We're creating culture every minute, all the time. We change culture. That's why we keep growing new ways of being in the world. We are members of identity and geographical communities, and that's very important to us. It's something that was hard fought for those things to be able to be valued and celebrated, and they're still often, as we know, under challenge in multiple ways. But if we're only that, we forget that we build new communities and new connections that are not only determined by identity. We create new ways of being with other people that bring about new communities that transform what it means to be who we are. We behave, and I don't just mean we behave well, because often we don't, but what I mean by we behave is we are like other animals, we react, right? If X happens, we do Y. And some people, sometimes I think that's 99%, right? I get up in the morning and I brush my teeth because that's what I've been rewarded for doing. I understand why I do it. But we also perform. And what we mean by perform is it's a word that actually, it's very related to play, but performing is creating new versions of what you do. One could think of behavior actually as calcified performance, right? We performed new things and then they become behaviors. So when we're 3, 4 years old, we're performing all the time. We perform as walkers and talkers, and we perform as all the things we pretend to be, doctors and train conductors, but we also perform sitting at the dinner table and going out saying bye-bye to grandma, right? Performing means creating a new, it's rather than just being who you are, it's also being who you are becoming. And so for me, improv was the way and is a way to be in both sides of this chart at the same time. It creates the dialectic between being a behavior and a performer, right? We need to behave sometimes. I always say when we get in the car, I don't want people to perform driving. I want them to drive how they're supposed to drive. But when somebody is learning something new, we want them to perform. If they don't put themselves in a position to do what they don't know how to do, to create a new version of themselves, it's very, very difficult to learn. And improv, like we just did, reconnects us to that ability because we're making it up. We're using everything that's available to us, the culture, the identities, the tools around us to make something new, to be tool makers, creators of culture, builders of new communities and performers. It allows those two things, it makes us more fully human. But when students come to us, they've often had 12 to 14 years of being told that what's valuable is the left side of this chart. What's evaluated, what's important is being able to behave, being able to adapt, being able to use the tools you're given. That's what is evaluated, graded, and rewarded. And so for us, improv and performance and play, all of those things are a window into making us more fully human. So I think I'll stop there. I will stop there and open it up and say, where does that take you? If you think about your own teaching, your own life, the way you see the world, does it take you anywhere? It's an offer, if you will.
The first thing that comes up for me is we don't have the tools and the apparatus sometimes as teachers to access that other side. I mean, I think that's why we're here. I mean, that's a lot of what the play is about. It's trying to encourage people to discover and invent tools that get you to the other side. Because frankly, we've all been taught to do the other stuff. We're very well rehearsed and disciplined
in the left-hand side of the chart,
in the traditional curriculum. So I think it's a challenge to us to not just say, oh, we'll just start doing that. And we have to actually build our own systems for even, which are going to challenge the status quo systems too.
Yeah.
One of
No,
the
I think
things
that's
that
really
I think
important.
is key. Sorry, Karen.
No, go ahead.
One of the things I think that's key to that is that, and you have to grapple with it some, as we're saying, as what Dave was saying, Carrie, like it's not like it just comes, is that even though you're set up to relate to everybody as a tool user, right? This is how you use the computer, this is what you do with this. We are also tool creators. So it's not just how, like what we're able to do, it's starting to see anew that we're related. Humans have created all those tools and we're a part of that. So I think that sometimes it's good to like grapple with how we see people and what starts to change if we are like kind of like having both, that we're tool users, tool creators, culture. We can create culture in the classroom. So what goes on for me is if I'm not relating to people that way, I really feel it. I feel like I'm holding them back. And then it's sort of like gives me motivation in a way. Jen, what are you thinking?
I was just gonna add on a little to what David was saying. I was surprised going through, and I'm a little bit more hard science, but I was surprised going through it how uncomfortable it was for me. Just like not only do I not have the tools, but it's a different aspect in relating to myself. And so how do I build the tools and build the experience authentically for everybody else to make the most of it? So
Yeah.
I found that interesting as I was just reflecting
Oh,
a little
that's
bit about
interesting.
the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting, Jen, is that, and I don't know what kind of a scientist you are, but science is in some ways extremely good at living in both sides of that chart.
Well,
Because
that's the funny
science is,
part. So I'm in oncology, so I'm patient facing, like I'm
Yeah.
frontline facing.
yeah,
But so that's why where my head is going is students always have a really hard time with flexibility, and they
right,
want patients to do what the textbook says rather than
Yes.
listening to what the patient needs and adapting to what the textbook
Yeah.
says. Right?
Yeah.
So that way the patient can make most of it. So I'm immediately thinking I need to explore this a whole lot more than I've ever
Yeah.
considered, because I think it really would be a fabulous tool, but I can only imagine how that's going to go for my students if it brings up, stuff for me. So,
Yeah.
and I consider
Well-
myself quite comfortable talking to people, right? It's something I really enjoy. This though is a different, like it's like a couple steps beyond.
Yeah.
So
Well, Jen, I'm happy to send, there's quite a bit of work that's been done on improv in medicine.
perfect. Well, I'm going to explore that. I
so-
already have an email
Yeah.
myself. So if
Yeah.
anybody has resources or opportunities, please feel free to send them my way. I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
It's great. That's exciting. Susan.
Yeah, I'm not working at university now, but I am training teachers who come from university and who are teaching in many different countries. And I'm a drama specialist. So I'm very used to doing improvisation and always very surprised that teachers don't learn to do it at training college. I've always wondered why training colleges don't have it naturally on their syllabus, on their curriculum. Because for me, it's something which all students from Carrie, I know you've been in kindergarten, and I've been in kindergarten, primary, secondary, and adult education. And I think everybody needs to learn to express themselves and to have that opportunity to learn how to do it so that it's not something which they are afraid of. And this is my barrier to teaching it, because people go, no, that's not for me. I don't do that. And when I was in China teaching at the university in China, teaching EMI actually to professors of all different subjects, at first they were just, no, that's not what we do. We are instructors and we instruct. But once I got them into it, they were quite incredible. I had a lot of doctors, a lot of dentists, and some students, professors actually teaching law. And they saw lots and lots of ways of using it in their classes. And that was very, very heartwarming for me.
That's great.
It's like it's one of those experiences where you can make discoveries. I think it's really important for people to like look for those opportunities. So they were making discoveries with you, and then can continue to keep offering them. But we are discovery makers.
Gwen, I think we should play our next
Yeah.
game.
Okay. Good. All right. So, and this one, Carrie, can we do it all together here? The amount of people we have?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. And I also wanted to point out that none of these games are subject specific at all, as you can tell, right? And there are, in the way that who was just asking about the medical improv? Jen.
Jen.
Right? There are very specific, there's so many resources, and I'm excited that you asked for them and we can share. There are also specifics to science. There's a whole organization now called Improv Science.
I forgot about that. That's right.
And they have something called the Freedom Festival that they lead each year. And it's a wonderful resource. So, you know, Carrie, afterwards, we can send out a bunch of different links, like email everybody once we have this info. And put what we can here, like Carrie just did. The magic. Yeah, so just so you know that we're focusing on the how. How do you create an ensemble in the classroom? How do you bring the most out of the offers students and fellow teachers have to offer? And so I just hope you take it with that, the color, okay? And we can follow up in any kind of way about anything you want to talk more about in specific subjects. Yeah. So this next game is we're going to create a collective memory. Okay. Can we tell if we're still in the orders that we were before we went into breakout rooms?
No, I think David has to do it again. David, can you go back in and set the order again under the view button? Although Gwen, there's another way to do that with this, which is at the end of each person's thing, they say, hey, Gwen, do you remember that? That's another way to do it, I think.
If we can do it this way, make sure we get everybody.
I haven't changed it. You still should have.
Okay, then great. Then maybe it is.
Yeah.
So I see David, Carrie, Teresa, Susan, and then back to my left, Jessica, me, Joe, and Grace. Is that what people see?
Yep.
Okay. And if anybody just seems to not be in there, just shout out whatever you want, whenever you want to say something. Okay, so here I am. I think I should, Carrie, why don't you start? Because you're on the top. And
Okay.
at least we won't get mixed up. So we're gonna go like this way. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I didn't say what we're gonna do. We're gonna create.
I'm like,
do
okay.
it anyway, Carrie. Okay, we're gonna create a collective memory. All right. I don't want to say too much, but you're thinking yes and. Okay. You can say yes and let it guide you. And similarly to what we did with the party, try to take the specifics of the memory that was just shared with you and see if you could say yes and add a little bit. Okay? Okay, Carrie.
Hey, everybody, do you remember that time we went on vacation to Trinidad and we got there in the huge super jumbo jet that was just for us? Teresa, do you remember that?
I do. That was such an amazing experience because there were about, I don't know, like 150 of us in this jumbo jet going to Trinidad and to go on a week-long vacation at an all-inclusive resort, which I had never done before. And so I was just so excited to try something new.
Yes.
Did you remember that, Susan?
Yeah, I'll never ever forget it. I was so excited. Well, number one, getting in a jumbo jet, which was just for us. And then secondly, going to Trinidad. I'd always seen Trinidad on the map, but I'd never been there before. And I had it on my bucket list, but I never really thought I'd get there. And when we arrived, it was absolutely pouring with rain. And I never imagined there was anything but sun in Trinidad. Do you remember, Jessica?
Oh my gosh. I remember that so well. It was pouring cats and dogs. And it was incredible because no one had an umbrella. So we had to like cut the legs off our pants and make them into umbrellas. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. Gwen, do you remember that?
Yeah, I think what was so inventive about that, what we did is that we took it because it was warm, it's Trinidad, right? So we cut off the legs of our pants and then we were in shorts and then we took off our tops,
Yes.
right? And then we were able to do that. Some of us put our bathing suit tops on too. It's starting to sound like this was all women, but there were some guys there too. So they just took off their tops, but that was cool. So then we ran off the plane in our shorts and our bodies. Joe.
Yeah, I remember a lot of floppage that day. It took me a long time to recover from the chafing and the bouncing. But the sun eventually came out, and that rainbow was absolutely gorgeous, astounding. I've never seen a double rainbow before, and I think that Grace, you were talking about that too, and then you were talking about gold at the end of the rainbow, and you just had so many fanciful thoughts about that.
You're muted.
In space.
I do remember that. And I remember getting so hungry after all of that. And we found this incredible restaurant. And we went inside and they had this wonderful live band and music. And they had this great buffet. I mean, it was just wonderful. And we were starting to dry out and we were hungry and we all sat down at this big table together. Beth, do you remember what we ate?
Oh, we ate everything. That was my biggest memory, was the food, because it was an all-inclusive place. So we ate everything available. I especially enjoyed the seafood because we were in Trinidad, and so there was really delightful fish, fresh from the ocean. I am from Texas originally, on the Gulf Coast, so I love shrimp. I can't really remember whether there was shrimp in Trinidad or not. But I remember the seafood and the cocktails. The cocktails and mocktails as well. Adriana, do you remember that?
I sure do. And do you remember when we went to that awesome parade? Because it was time of Carnaval and Trinidad had this incredible Carnaval. And I mean, it came in handy that we were practicing taking off our tops. I
think Christy remembers that. And remember there's 150 of us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Christy, do you remember that?
I do. And I remember the cocktails very well. I remember starting drinking the cocktails very strongly. And I'm a little fuzzy after that, but I do remember the carnival. And I remember all of us without our tops running around. And then we went running down to the beach because the clouds had all lifted and there was a beautiful moon out there. We ran down to the beach and we went skinny dipping in the ocean after that. I remember that there was a lot of other funny stuff that happened there, but maybe Jen remembers more of what happened in between the drinks and the skinny dipping.
Well, interestingly, one of my favorite parts was when we actually arrived at the resorts. Do you remember when they brought out the trays of champagne? I think that's when it all started to go downhill. There was no shortage. They had to go back and get more. And yeah, I think that really was the way to kickstart our whole adventure. It was a really great day. Dave, do you remember anything more about that trip?
Oh, I remember the guy that was driving the truck full of monkeys to the parade and he was looking at the rainbow and crashed. And I don't know how you could forget all the monkeys that were running around everywhere. I think that made it even more crazy.
David, could you please repeat that? I want to make sure I'm like, he's fuzzy to me. Could you just say it again?
apparently the guy was bringing monkeys to the parade and he was staring at the rainbow and he crashed the truck and all the monkeys escaped. So there were monkeys running around everywhere the whole time we were there. I think, Lisa, have you remembered that?
I don't know how you could forget it because the monkeys were topless, we were topless. Like there was just so much going on there that, I mean, it was sort of a sensory assault. But I definitely remember the monkeys. And I remember the time that Adriana actually had one of the monkeys on her shoulder and was feeding it some of the snacks from the buffet. And so that was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. What do you think, Jin?
Yes, I think so too. So we took lots of pictures of Adriana with the monkey and her feeding the monkey like our drinks and our food that we had. Yeah, I remember. So that was a lot of fun.
I remember you were kind of the cataloger of our trip. You did a lot of the photos, June, and
Yes.
you wrote a little bit about this. So it's really good to know that you did all that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the article was called Monkeying Around or something.
Yeah. Was monkeying around, a theoretical exploration of faculty eating and drinking too much in Trinidad. That was the full title
yeah.
in the journal, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Give yourselves a round of applause.
Good.
Virtual or real?
Wonderful. Thank you all. So I think what we should do from here, Carrie and June, is just see what this was like for everybody, share some links and next things we can do. And does that make sense for the
Yeah.
of where we are now? Okay. So, oh look, Jessica will go on vacation anytime with any of us. I love that there's 150 because every time we talked, I was picturing the 150 people for like each little scene. Like, what would that like? We were our own parade. We went to the parade, but we like had our own sub parade. Yeah. So let's just explore. Like, what was that like? What did we do? I'm not good at reading the chat while I'm talking to people. So
I
if
don't think you
anybody
need
wants
to, Gwen.
say,
Just keep going.
say what?
I don't think you need to. I think you can keep going.
I know, but I really want to see what people are saying. Okay, so but if anybody wants to say it, please. But what was that experience like? How did that feel? Yeah.
Appreciate that people got into it. It made it easier for people who needed another minute. But I thought that it was super fun to not have rules, and the wilder the better. I think that was kind of a nice way to break it up too, that you didn't have to like follow something scripted. And so it just kind of took away like a different sense of anxiety. So it was a lot of fun. You guys are a lot of fun.
So was people needing another minute that it was hard to feel, it was feeling like you had to think of something? Is that what you mean by needing
very
another
much.
minute?
I had like 4
Okay.
different subscripts.
Yeah.
And I didn't know when I was coming.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, I think one of the really incredible muscles one builds when you do this a lot is you begin to realize that all of your thinking is not as important as you think it is in this environment.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying, in certain environments, you're an oncology nurse, I want you to think about whether you're giving people the right medicine, all of that. But in many environments, our thinking gets in the way of us listening and creating with people. So it's part of what this is a great exercise for, is it teaches people, oh, I could open my mouth and speak and something will come out. So I really appreciate what you're saying about the thinking aspect. I often say to my students, stop thinking, like in this,
Yeah. It's
who had their hand
also
up?
the trusting that whatever you have to give, people will build with it.
Right.
So you might say, yeah, and then there were bananas. Right? That's all we need really to create with. And I also think that's the power of remix in a way, is that we're creating with what we've got here. So, and to feel confident in that. Yeah.
Somebody had their hand up before Gwen spoke. I don't.
Oh, it was me. And it was kind of like similar sentiment to what you were both talking about, which is like I always, and as an improviser for many years, the inclination to like think about my response in advance is so hard to fight. And to just truly listen to like what Susan was saying and to respond to one thing. I mean, you mentioned it was raining, and so that was what I responded to, and I didn't have something
Yeah.
preconceived, but it's so hard not to do that, and helping students to truly just like respond in the moment, respond to the last thing that was said, to not formulate their response in advance. It's a really hard skill set to learn and to practice, and it's essential in so many fields.
And in that way, it's so important for conversation, ordinary relationships, right? Somebody saying something, we're all already starting to think about what we are going to say. And can't you tell? I can tell when somebody's not really listening to me. And when they're like already like thinking about what they're going to say anyway, do you know? But it makes a big difference if people are responding to you and what you're saying. Yeah.
I'm part of a group that does a thing called reflective practice or collaborative communication. And so many of the things are really similar, which is one of the reasons.
Christy, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. I can make it louder, but I just didn't want to miss it. So
I was saying I'm part of a group that does it's called collaborative communication or reflective dialogue, and it's a kind of a framework for conversations. And I've always been very to improv as it fits. So many of the things are the same. Like we have so much that goes along there. But one of the things that I consistently run across, and I love this stuff, and I love everything you've said, really on board. But we get a lot of pushback from people who feel like, I think Jen didn't really say this, but it made me think of it. This idea that I cannot. That is way too stressful. This is traumatic for me to try to come up with an idea as everybody's talking, or even respond to somebody or whatever. And we get that a lot in that too. And I'm just wondering if anybody, any additional tools for that? Because I mean, it's hard. It's hard for everybody, but some students are really, really struggle with it.
And where did you say this is happening? Like, who are the people and who it's the setting?
So the collaborative communication and reflective dialogue we're doing at the University of Wyoming, and actually we have a group across the nation. But these are classrooms and with faculty. Sometimes faculty are like, this is not something I can do. I cannot, like, if we went through this group with a group of random faculty who had not showed up for this, there would have, in my experience, would have been somebody that was like, no way, and they might have just left, or something like that. And they feel very stressful and very. They get real resistant because they're really stressed. And so I just want
Carrie, I have another question. I know we don't, but are you talking about doing yes and activities, like you're doing improv activities?
Yeah.
Versions
of them. Jessica, did you have a response? Is that why you raised your hand?
I did, and I saw Joe unmute first, so I'd love to hear from Joe.
All right, thank you. I was like, where's the hand thing? A couple of ideas that come to me, Christy, is have them do exercises where they only speak in numbers. So, and possibly progressive numbers. One person says 1, next person says 2, next person says 3, and so on. Because then that takes away the pressure of saying the right thing. They're just saying a number. Or even like a silent scene. And then you can talk about the distance and what does that say and what's the tone and all that. So I feel like that takes a little bit of pressure off, is they can't possibly, or even saying the same number or the same syllable over and over and over again gets them participating. And another thing I do is I'll tell them, like, make the worst choice ever. You don't have, if someone endows you as a doctor, you don't have to, no one says you're a good doctor, you're just a doctor. Do the worst you possibly can. It usually tends to be way more fun anyway.
And building off of that, like, no improviser goes up on stage before having done some kind of warm up. So you don't launch into like yes anding before you've done like some exercises to get you into that mindset. And I found that like time after time doing like a quick warm up game, and there's so many out there, will really kind of get them loosened up and warmed up. And the other exercise that I really love that is yes anding, and it does involve any speaking at all, is called one line drawing. So you're drawing a picture together collaboratively. And it's practicing the skill of yes anding, but it's not putting people
Beautiful.
on the spot, so that you're like progressing up to a spot where they're on display. And it's, yeah, that really
Yeah.
helps with easing folks in.
Love
I think
this.
what's
And then-
important about that to me is, you know, there's a lot of ways to get people out of the trap that language puts us in. Language is where we think there's a right and a wrong, right? If I go like this, nobody's going to say, oh, you didn't do that right, right? I mean, unless I guess if I'm in a modern dance class with a bad instructor. But once we introduce language, almost immediately everybody's afraid that they're going to get it wrong. And so I think what Jessica's saying about building up to there, but I think it's really important to build to there, because you can create environments without language that are so intimate, everybody feels completely transformed. But we are a language species. We use language all the time. So I think it is important to, at some point, which I think we were all saying, as Jessica was saying, build to it. The last thing I want to say, and then I know Gwen's going to say we have to move on, is there's an exercise that I do the first thing in every class that is, I don't know how to do it online. I'm trying to work on a version, but it's called I Made a Mistake. And actually I do the counting to 3, where I say 1 and Christy, you say, and I say 3, and then you go back to 1 and 2, 3, and we just keep counting. At some point, somebody makes a mistake, and I don't even tell them we're going to do this, but when they do, their job is to throw their hands up in the air and scream, I made a mistake. And then the entire room breaks into wild applause. So, and then you have to commit to that, meaning you have to be willing to celebrate that all the time. And there was one last piece I was going to say about that. It's also, the other thing is, if somebody doesn't want to do something, I say that's fine. Their job is to be part of the audience, and the audience is one of the most critical parts of any performance. So I have no problem with that. Great. Would you like to be in the audience? Listen, what your job is going to be is, after each person says their part, I want you to applaud wildly. Because unfortunately, you're the only audience member today, so you're going to have to like really,
I actually wasn't going to move on, Carrie. I was going to say a really important thing.
Okay, and then I'm
But
going to put the slide up.
I'm putting it in the chat again. So we don't have time to talk about this much, but our job is to make the other person look good. Like if we're passing on something to them, it's to, if they need 3 words and my words are and then they, right? I'm setting them up to be successful. And our job is to make our group look good. And then eventually everybody can see that. So if you're working in a subject area that's very challenging, what a relief it is if they were all trying, and other people talk to this, are making each other look good. So there's a lot to say about that, but you could take that sentiment with you. And then Carrie, I have the
To put in the chat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we wanted to, I think we tried to stress this in the beginning. We are so not alone. And if you've been doing this creative work, hopefully you know you're not alone, but there is, in our opinion, a serious movement afoot of people who are saying, hey, the tools we've been using to learn and develop and to grow are not working, and we need to bring more creativity and play into that. So these are just a sampling of organizations we have created or are part of. Gwen is going to put the links to them in the chat. Global Play Brigade began in 2020 when lockdown started to bring the opportunity for play to people across the globe, and it's continued as a grassroots effort to make play more mainstream and to develop play facilitators and creative people all over the world. Performing the World, which we just concluded our 2024 gathering, is a conference, but it's also a community. We had 800 people watching presentations of people using play and creativity under the most dire circumstances. We had groups from the West Bank and Gaza. We had people from Israel. We had people from Nigeria and Kenya, and also the streets of New York City. So Performing the World is a growing community of what we call performance activists. Applied Improv Network, which you mentioned earlier, is probably the biggest professional organization of people who use improvisation in a variety of fields. And then the last link is to the Eastside Institute's Associates, which is about 150 people who have studied play and performance with us and have gone off to create their own organizations and activities. And so there are just a wide range of people to explore. So we offer those to you to check out, as you are now members of our community. People are all members of our community till they tell us they don't want to be. And then I do want to make a personal invitation. Actually, David will be one of my panelists in a few weeks on November, I think it's 17th. I am leading a webinar with my co-host, Luke Perrone. It's called Play in Higher Education. Is there something going on? A dialogue among playful innovators. And David and Lisa from the Process at Play are my guests, as well as Edward Stevenette, who is the youth coordinator for the Learning Planet, which is a very innovative change organization. And his work is to involve young people in redesigning what education, in particular higher education, is. And Matthias Paulsen runs an organization called Counterplay, which brings together people who just love play and want to make use of it across their lives. And he works at a design university in Denmark that is trying to infuse play throughout their entire curriculum. So this QR code should take you to the registration page, and I hope you'll share it with others. And then lastly, this is Gwen and June and I are all part of the Yes and Higher Education Network. And this link will take us you to the page on the Eastside Institute's website where we live, the Yes and Network. We have about, I think at this point, we have several hundred members. We do monthly gatherings. We've done presentations together. We've written together, and it's also just a place to get to know other people who are interested in improvisation and play in higher education. So we are sisters to the professors at Play in that way. And if you reach out to Gwen, you can join the network.
Yeah, we can just put you on the list, and then you'll get emails and stuff. Yeah.
All right.
June and Carrie and everybody,
Thank you
so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, David.
Thank you all.
So appreciate the opportunity.
So wonderful.
And thank you for hanging in with us after a rough beginning.
Thanks
I thought
to
we
you all.
improvised rather well.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. Really,
All right,
really
and
good
if
to
you
get to
want
know you.
any information, you can reach out to any of us, but certainly to Gwen, who has her email up on that slide.